Hello, everyone, and welcome to this brand new episode of Christine Means Business. And today I am not on my own, but I have a lovely episode with Trevor Oldham today. And he has a really interesting bio. So I'm going to read that to you, and then I'm going to make a little comment about that. So stay tuned, because I have there's one thing that I was like, I want to dive in. And I didn't tell him this before, so no, don't be scared though. So Trevor is a serial entrepreneur and a walking example that you can run a business regardless of your age. His most recent venture, Podcasting You, works with successful individuals to get them booked on podcasts. Prior to Podcasting You, Trevor started a motivational company that grew to over 600,000 followers in its first year, and a t-shirt company, Trevor James Products, that provided clean water to those in developing countries. So obviously there's so much to say about this, so many questions to ask. But the first thing that I wanted to hint out was, regardless of your age, why is that sentence in there? Especially for those of you who are not seeing the video, but head over to YouTube if you want to actually see us live, or if you want to see us talking to each other. But why is that sentence in your bio?
I like to put that sentence in there because right now I'm a 23-year-old entrepreneur, and I find that most young people don't think that they can go out there and start a business. And going through college, I started 3 different businesses. I could say a little bit of a fourth one early on that didn't end up going so well, so that's why I don't include it. But I really like to motivate people to say it doesn't really matter of your age, especially the young entrepreneurs out there that if they are in college, they might think, hey, I can't go out there and start a business. I don't have enough time. And I like to debunk that myth. When I was in college, I ended up transferring halfway through. I ended up taking 6 courses in a semester. I had an internship, and I was still able to build my businesses. So I really like to debunk that myth that people don't have enough time. I think right now we have more than enough time, especially given the current climate and everything that's been going on. I don't really have anything to worry about. I don't have like a family that's holding me back or any of that sort of thing. So I think really young, especially starting as a young entrepreneur, there's so much time. And plus, if you fail, there's really not that much downside.
That's true. That's exactly it. Especially if especially if you are still in college and you kind of have your living paid for, in a way, or you have scholarships, or, it's not an additional cost to your business necessarily. And that is why I want to make the link, because a lot of us do know that running a business, especially in the beginning, can be really expensive when it comes to trial and error. But I would also argue, if you do not have access to finances like that, you need to get creative and you need to bootstrap. And so from what I can tell, you've been doing just that, and your company have been really successful. So before we go straight into Podcasting You and how you help people getting on podcasts, what are some, maybe, I don't want to say techniques, but maybe some practices that you have seen where maybe more seasoned or older people have invested a lot of money in their business that you managed to do without a lot of expenses because you just bootstrapped it, or because you have a system in place? What are some of these things where you'd say, hey, actually, why don't you try this and this in order to save finances? Because funny enough, a lot of people, even if they have some finances, they never have enough. So what are some of the things that you find, or that you want to try and tell someone who is, young and just like, oh, I think I need to first get a job and have some savings before I start my own business? What were some things, some hacks where you'd say, hey, actually, this and this and this can save you tons of money?
I think the biggest thing for me was freelancing in the beginning. That's what really got me started into Podcasting You. And with freelancing, you can try out a bunch of different things. And the site I used was Upwork. I started writing blogs for people, editing their podcasts. Then I got started into getting people booked on podcasts, which is, now the business that I run. And with that, I started off small, maybe charging $20 an hour, and then grew it up to, $75 an hour. But that really allowed me to see what I do want to do and what I don't want to do. Let's say if I thought, oh, I want to do podcast editing full time, it's not something I really enjoy, but it paid, money at that time. I like writing blog posts, but if I go out and it could take me 5 hours to write a blog post, so I might only get paid $100. Whereas in my Podcasting You business, I could probably get paid $100 for getting a client on a show within 20 minutes or so. So I found out my time is spent more valuable on Podcasting You. It generates more income in a quicker capacity. It's not totally dependent on me. I think that really gives someone the opportunity to go out there and just try out different things. And then plus, it allows you to get client testimonials, which I found to be very, very beneficial to my business. Probably the first 5 to 10 clients I got were straight from Upwork. And from there, it really just allowed me to grow my business and then figure out what I want to do. So that way I didn't have to have a website up there. I didn't even have any that came down the road. So anyone that's out there like, oh, I need to go out and create a website right now, you really don't have to if you just put yourself out there freelancing. And it's not easy. I don't want to say it's easy in the beginning where you can go on, apply for a job and you get accepted. It's going to take some time. I think it really took me a good 3 to 4 months to get a job that would be paying well, but it is certainly possible. So anyone that's interested in starting their own business, I recommend trying freelancing out first, and then trying to really see what works for you, what you like and what you don't like. Because sometimes what you think you might like to do isn't exactly what you're going to do. Like when I was doing podcast editing, I liked it, but I was like, I don't want to do this, 40 hours a week, just sitting there listening to someone's show, editing everything out. So it really allowed me to figure out what I wanted to do. So anyone that's, strapped for cash, I would say that's probably the best way to go about it. Whether, you're 20, 30 or 40, there's always jobs that are out there, and it really allows you to get your foot in the door. And if someone says, I don't think I have any skills, I guarantee you there's some skill out there on Upwork, between the millions of jobs where someone would be more than happy to pay you to get it off the plate, even if it's creating social media posts. Someone could pay you $15, $20 an hour, and you could create 4 to 5 posts a week for them and use a simple tool like Canva that has pre-designed posts. So you really and it's a good learning opportunity as well. And again, just to figure out what you want, there's basically no costs set up to start applying for jobs. So that's probably what I would recommend to anyone that's strapped for cash. And that's really what I did to really grow the company that I run now.
Yeah. And even, the audience that we're talking to, they already have their business. So they do have, a coaching practice and they're taking it online. So it's maybe not about figuring out what they want to do. But I would say one thing that that we need to get used to, a lot of us are academically challenged in a way that we are used to academic writing. It's blog posting. You don't write it like a university essay or a college essay. So it would be good, because you have people looking for someone to write blogs. If you want to practice that, then why not do that in exchange for a fee where Upwork could literally help? And otherwise, it's really interesting for research on topics too, because if you have a look at who is looking for what kind of topics, it might inspire you as well. Plus, obviously, if you're looking for freelancers, Upwork is also a great tool to use. But I do find it's really a good tool, as you're saying right now, to practice something and get paid for it in the end, actually, to figure out what you want to do. Or even if you're saying, look, I already know I don't want to do this, but just to know what you're going to ask from someone when you hire them, I do think this is an interesting approach that isn't making you lose money, because you have to do it yourself first. I started out and I did everything myself first and learned all this stuff. I do have to say that I'm interested in this stuff, so it was fun. I also know that clients of mine really don't. But I do argue that it is worth it. And if you can, practice it with other people's tools as well and get paid, why not? So that would be one lesson that I think is already well taken on here. The second one that I really want to dive into right now is that obviously I have a lot of people who want to get more out there. So they've started their business coaching, their business or their health practice or their online wellness coaching or life coaching practice online. And, I always preach that you first have to know who you are. Then you need to know your numbers and your packages, and then your email, your content creation. And then the last part of the impact with integrity method is PR. And podcasting for me is a huge step, because I find when people listen to you, they get to know you much quicker. The trust factor is just shorter, and you can gauge other people's audiences. So what you run a successful company now with a team, I reckon, who are reaching out to get people on podcasts. So if I have someone listening right now, and I actually know that in the mastermind I'm running at the moment, a lot of them are a little bit frustrated because they reach out and it's crickets. So what are some troubleshoots maybe that you have in store where you're saying, okay, these are the typical mistakes I see that people do? And what are some of the things that you find work very well?
I find the biggest mistake, especially someone that's new, is trying to get on the biggest podcast in their space, especially in your certain niche, you probably know the top names in your space, and usually those top names, a good majority of them will be running a podcast, and people think, even if they've never been on a show, I can go on their show. And that's going to be really hard if you've never been on a podcast and you want to go on, say, the largest show in your niche. So what we do with clients, if they come to us and they've never been on a show, we basically have our shows on a scale of, small, medium, and large, where a small show might be a show that got started, a few months ago. And that's where we would want to place those clients who haven't been on really any shows yet, to allow them to get some practice. Plus, once you're on some shows, then you can go back to your podcast pitch, and then you can include them to show relevant interviews that you've done. If you're a podcast host that, has 500 reviews, 1,000 reviews, you're probably not going to want to have someone on if they've never had a podcast interview before, no matter how good their story is. So it allows them to see and get to know you and see that you have these podcast interviews done in the past. And then two, another one we see is not targeting the right audience. And again, this goes back to the large shows. We have clients come to us and they want to be on the largest shows out there in the space. So let's say a client comes to us and they want to be on the Joe Rogan show. And I look at them and I'm like, it's totally not a fit for what he's talking about and the guests he has on a show. They just want to be on that show. And we have to really work with them to figure out their target audience. And what I like to say is, even if a podcast gets 100 downloads, picture if you were in a room with 100 people and you were speaking to them and they were your target audience, it's going to be way more impactful than a show that has 5,000 listeners, but only maybe 5 people resonate with your message. So honing in on that target audience. And then there's 3, I guess I should say, the tool that I recommend using is Listen Notes, and anyone can really go out and use it. And using Listen Notes, you can search the keyword by name. So like, let's say you're a self-development coach, you can type in self-development and you can see all the relevant podcasts. So there's going to be a lot on there. And then the cool thing about Listen Notes, what our team really did to build out our database is you can purchase a file of all the shows, and then you can go through one by one. It might take a little bit of time, but it might take, I believe it took us like 40 hours to build out like a database. But if you just spend it over a month, you're going to have 100, 200 shows. And then plus you can go through and say, all right, these are the large shows. These shows have 100 plus reviews. These are my medium-sized shows. They have 50 reviews. These are my small shows that have, 10 plus reviews. All right, I haven't been on any podcasts before. Let me focus on these, get some of these small shows. Now, once I'm on some of these small shows, I'll move to these medium shows. And once I'm on the medium shows, then you're able to piggy that back up to the large shows. So it's starting small and then working your way up. It's not going for the largest shows in your niche. And that's usually what we see when people come to us that have been having trouble. I'm sure they have a great story, but if you just haven't been on a podcast interview before, it's going to be really hard to get on those top tier shows, because you could think they're probably getting pitched 50, 100 times a day, where a smaller show that's just starting out, they probably don't have as many people pitching them. So your success rate of being able to get on those shows is probably going to be a little bit easier.
Agreed. And then I have another question, because a lot of my mentees or my students in my mastermind group have very specific targets, because they've been working with us. And so we taught them to choose a niche. And so they would be, for example, thyroid or hormones or Lyme disease or, something like that, or menopause, So they very often go and look for those very targeted topics. And once they've reached out to all that are obviously their niche, then they haven't gotten an answer. They become, very discouraged. What would you recommend to someone like that?
I think sometimes when people go out and write their pitch to a host, is they make it sort of all about themselves, when they should be turning that into the benefit that the host audience is going to receive. So they might say, I can talk about, how to cure, not how to cure, but how to, something to do with Lyme disease, how to expedite the recovery process, where you could turn that into saying, I can teach your audience them. Your audience can benefit by learning how they can expedite the recovery process. So instead of using words like I, me, we, you can turn it into like you and your. So you're always talking about their audience, because at the end of the day, that host, that's going to be their benefit, is going to be their audience. And it's not, you're not coming on just to promote yourself. It's going to be a two-way street. So you really want to make sure that that host's audience is going to be benefited. And that's what we really recommend, is when we look at a pitch, is if you're just talking about yourself, the host is going to be like, why do I really care? But if you say, this is how I can benefit your audience, or your audience, then you're able to go in and write some talking points. And that's another thing that we find, is a lot of people they talk too much about themselves. So if they more go into the benefit to the audience, the host is going to be able to resonate more and be like, oh, we haven't talked about this certain topic. This person can come in and benefit our audience by talking about this. So just making that small little switch, if you're including talking points in your pitch, will do wonders.
I agree. I agree. And maybe give even scenarios of how it can apply to that particular audience, actually. Yes, perfect. So we are going to talk a little bit more in detail about your newest company, and that is Podcasting You. And you told us already a little bit about some things that you make sure that your clients do, with their profile and how they select podcasts or how you select podcasts to them. But what does Podcasting You actually look like? What is the process that people will go through? And how have you started building up, and how have you started to get clients? Because it doesn't matter whether it's podcasting or whether it's coaching, there's always different things we do in order to get a stream of clients to in your business. So I'm going to pick your brain on what you did in order to grow Podcasting You.
Well, certainly. So what we do for our clients today is we'll actually go out, we'll create a pitch for them, we'll create a media kit for them. And the way we do that is we have them fill out, it's basically like 20 questions or so. So we really like to go like a deep dive into who's your target audience, what do you love to talk about, those sort of questions. So sometimes people might be like, oh, I didn't even realize I could talk about this certain topic. So it's really just trying to pull all the information out of the individual. And then additionally, we'll go through and we'll create that podcast database based on their pitch and their media kit of these targeted shows. And we'll go through and again, we'll rank them on a sort of small, medium, and large scale. So if someone's never really been on a show, we'll really focus in on the small shows. And if they have been on a few, we can, go towards those medium shows. So it really just allows them to see all the shows within their specific niche and allows us to get a gauge of how many shows we'll be able to book them on. And then from there, once all those 3 items are created, someone from our team, one of our booking agents, will go out and then start reaching out to the host. And then we like to sort of make that pitch customized to that certain host, because even if, if I'm going on, say, entrepreneur shows, each one's going to be a little bit different than the other. So we like to make it a little customized to that show, maybe referencing a past episode, maybe, referencing something in the show description, basically how I can benefit their audience. And I'd like to tie it into something centered around the show. So our team will go out and then pitch the client, and then usually, hopefully, we'll get a yes back from the host. So our main goal is to save people time. We found that anyone can go out there and get themselves booked on podcasts. And it's not, I don't want to say it's the hardest thing. It's just more of a time-consuming thing where it's creating that pitch and the media kit, researching the shows. And honestly, the biggest thing is not so much the pitch and the media kit. It's just finding the correct shows to be on. That's the one that takes the longest amount of time. If we spend 5 to 10 hours onboarding a client, probably an hour or two will be creating the pitch and the media kit, and the rest will be spent researching shows and getting the correct shows. So that's the biggest emphasis we put on our clients, is making sure that we're pitching them to the right shows. And then I guess going on, and the way we've been able to grow our business is, one, we do a great job with referrals, and that's always nice to see. But then generating new business, we do cold email outreaches, and that's pretty much been the biggest benefactor. And the way we do that is we'll target a certain niche. Like, let's say, like right now, our certain niche is real estate investors. We'll pull a list together of all the real estate investor shows we have on our database. And then I'll have a virtual assistant reach out to them and say, hey, we saw that you were on this podcast. Our company helps other real estate investors get booked on podcasts. This is what we do for you. This is how we can help you. Here's a link to my calendar. Here's a link to our website. And then here's a case study. And then we just send that off. And then usually when we send that off, we'll send off usually 100 per week. And then out of those 100, we'll get about 10 calls scheduled. And then out of those 10 calls, we'll probably close 3 to 4 clients. So that's the way we found it to be beneficial. And I just felt as though going directly to the individual, because we just know that they're already on podcasts. Obviously, they were on there for a reason. So we basically have our audience right there. And that's pretty much been the best way we've been marketing, is doing that cold email outreach. And it's been pretty successful for us.
I find that too, in terms of that. I don't necessarily do it myself for clients, but I have had the odd cold outreach to myself in terms of, well, obviously I've got you through cold outreach, but also a copywriter I'm working with at the moment was through cold emailing. So a lot of people say that technique is dead, and I really don't think so. Obviously, I think it depends on what kind of service you're selling, right? Especially if I work with a lot of coaches who sell health or life coaching. Obviously, that will be really difficult to do. But for other people who just have a business, or, you know, who do something different, who sell a service, I do think that it's a really, really good technique still, right? So, and for those, so for my audience rather, I would say listen to this very carefully, because it's really about, to me, this is something I outsource, like podcast outreach. If I'm going to do a new podcasting tour, then I'm not going to do that myself, because it's just, I know that it's going to drain me. It's not my energy flow. You know, I rather invest, you know, a couple of hundred or even thousands and get, you know, clients that way, have sure that I get new testimonials. I do have a lot of PR because of my previous business, but if I'm starting something incredibly new, this is the fastest way to get street cred, which is, to me, is PR. And so if you are new in your business, I think this is an alley that you should definitely proceed to investigate. And I was wondering if you have different tiers that people can work with you.
Well, certainly. So what we do is we work with on tiers now. So something we actually just started implementing this month. So we work on sort of, you know, a silver package, a gold package, and then a platinum package. So like a silver might be, you know, some of those might be, we're targeting shows that have, you know, 10 to 50 reviews. Then that gold package is, you know, 50 to 100 reviews. And then platinum is 100 and up. Because what we found in the past is we used to, basically, it would just be one single podcast package. It'd be 15 shows, 20, 25 shows. But some people would come to us and they haven't been booked on shows, so we'd focus on small shows. Some people come to us and been booked on these bigger shows, so we'd focus on the large, and just put. And so, like, we charge more for that platinum package, because it's about 5 times more work to get on a large show than it is a smaller show. So we found, you know, we're spending, you know, they're paying us the same amount of money, whether they're being on a small show or a large show. You know, we got to figure out a way to sort of create these podcast packages out there for our team that's going to be beneficial, because it's just a lot more work trying to get on these bigger shows. You know, a conversion rate on a small show might be 50%, where on a large show it might be 10%. So it's going to be more research, more pitching, and that sort of thing. So that's where we've started to work, and something I wish we would have done sooner, because we've taken on clients where we've worked with them to get on these large shows. And I was like, wow, we definitely could have charged them more than what we were charging in the past.
And I also argue that sometimes it is really not beneficial if you're on a large show very early. With Sleep Like a Boss, I was on John Lee Dumas's Entrepreneur on Fire within 2 months of opening my business. And I wish I'd taken my time. It's not that it was a bad interview, but I would do it so much differently today. And also, I was on So Money by Farnoosh Torabi. Those are really big, big, big shows, right? But I wasn't ready yet. So even though it's fine, I'm not, you know, cringing in shame or anything, I could make so much more of it now. So I do think it's smart also to really know which client benefits from what. So I guess it takes a little bit of, you know, steering and coaching of your end as well. But if you're listening, getting to the big shows quickly is not always the most beneficial way. I do find that you have much more interesting things to tell. The longer you are in business, the more clients you worked with, the more personal lessons you learned, the more you can be honest and genuine during the interviews and really give unique answers that are unique to your stories. So it is true that small in the beginning, I think, works so much better. And I've got clients from really teeny tiny shows before, so there's nothing to say that it's not beneficial or it's not something to frown upon, for sure. So you have been incredibly helpful today already, and if people want to reach out to you, there's different ways to doing that. And also, how do people reach out to you best? So there's different ways. I have your website, which is www.podcastingyou.com. And how else can people get in touch with you?
Sure. So Podcasting You is going to be, you know, our website. And then if anyone has any questions, whether it's related to entrepreneurship or podcasting, feel free to reach out to trevor@podcastingyou.com, and I'll be happy to answer any questions they may have.
Perfect. Do you also have a social media handle where people can stalk you?
Sure. So the best one would probably be Instagram. So that's going to be at my full name, which is Trevor Oldham.
Perfect. And Oldham is with an H. I'm just going to say that in case people get confused. But you will have all of that in our show notes as well. And so do reach out to Trevor. This is really like a connecting platform too. When you're listening and you're like, oh, I want to get know more about this, then please do reach out. And I find this is a phenomenal service, something that you should really consider doing, because I'm really into outsourcing if it's draining your energy and if it's keeping you from actually working with people or being in your zone of genius. So Trevor, thank you so much. I'm really excited about how this business is going to grow. There were already so many amazing pieces of advice. I've took notes of a couple of things that I hadn't known yet and or resources. So thank you so much for that. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of you and hearing more of you. And who knows, I'll probably reach out soon because I have a podcasting tour planned and I do not intend of reaching out myself. So thanks so much for being here today.
Perfect. Thank you.